Pokemon have what would seem like immeasurable physical strength, being able to accomplish feats of power beyond our human comprehension. From being able to shatter diamonds with their horns, to destroying dump trucks with a single blow, stopping trains just by slapping them, and even shattering a gargantuan meteor that threatened all life on Earth. But we really don't know who is truly the strongest in terms of that sweet muscle. So I've decided to deep dive into the Pokemon world and find out who is truly the strongest Pokemon in the universe! Howdy there, I'm Krillic, and right off the bat, let's set off some ground rules. I am not using base stat totals at all. I want directly stated feats of strength. If it is not stated in the Pokédex, anime, side games, or any other official source, then it is not being considered for this video. The reason for this is because this gives us a more defined and measurable accomplishments per Pokemon instead of playing the guessing game or assuming something like all the fighting type Pokemon are, well, fighting types are martial artists, so of course they're strong, which that can get super complicated and arbitrary. As one more point of clarification, we are measuring physical strength. This can be punching, kicking, destroying something with physical contact, lifting something, you get it. This means that Pokemon such as Noibat, who uses supersonic sounds to destroy boulders, will not be discussed in this video, as that is not a physical strength. I also won't bore you with all of these specific math for all of them, especially as it would get repetitive, and I don't want to lose you in all the sauce here. But I'll at least give you my steps and the insanity that ensues whenever relevant. So let's begin with some of the Pokemon we can measure on the weaker side. These first couple of Pokemon are actually within the realm of humanity, things that we can do very easily, or we'll need to do with a little bit of training, a little bit of strength training, whatever it might be. And right off the bat, the weakest one is probably Rellor. It lifts a mud ball over its head, and since it's very much a dung beetle that eventually turns into a scarab beetle, it's just dung, really, not really a mud ball. And when dried, it can be super light, even with its size. So it's going to be less than 5 pounds, and it's going to be pretty negligible in terms of power. With Axew, it is a bipedal grayish-green Pokemon with pale straight tusks protruding from sides of its mouth. These husks can regenerate if broken and will regrow if they fall out, and these tusks are also used to actually scrape and mark rocks. Even if we say it's granite, it is really only scraping the rock, not crushing it, not shattering it, not destroying it, not vaporizing it. And don't worry, we'll start getting into the actual math of some of these soon enough. Right now, we're in generalization sections. Geodude can be found lying on the ground and has the power to crush small rocks. Not that incredibly impressive. Meanwhile, Fearow, according to Ash's Pokédex, says the beak's crushing power is tremendous, which is real descript. And finally, for the ones that are not super descript before we start getting into the nitty-gritty of it all, we have Annihilate, as it's more of an honorable mention since it does say it can punch with enough force to frighten someone to their core. I'll be real, I don't know about you, but if any Pokemon comes up to me, angry, ready to throw hands, I'm gonna be scared to my core. I am not Professor Kukui. I cannot take a hit like that from any Pokemon whatsoever. So yes, I will be afraid. And now we're actually into the math of things, because we have Nidorino, whose horn is harder than diamond and can destroy diamonds. And it uses that horn to destroy boulders in its search for moonstones. Now this, of course, is very interesting because when it comes to something like steel, the atom's overall makeup allows steel to not only hit hard but also take impact, making it both durable and strong as they can move around and spread throughout the impact itself. It's like punching a sponge, but more rigid. Meanwhile, when we look at diamond, it is more harshly arranged, bonded, where with just the right hit, it can't move and absorb the damage, and instead you can actually very, very easily smash the diamond if you hit at the right spot. As a side note, I am also going to be a party pooper. Diamond is not made from coal. Carbon turns into diamond. Coal is a bio rock essentially and is found near the surface of the earth, while diamonds are found a lot deeper. As such, it is literally impossible for coal to turn into diamond. Now, diamonds are incredibly frustrating because, like, there's one major issue with trying to figure out the math of this. It's because they've always been advertised as a woman's best friend. They're heavily skewed in terms of their value, how important they are, and how strong they are, so much more, that it makes it so much more difficult to find the necessary info on them. So I was able to find the following information, which is at least a little bit consistent, that we can then use to measure Nidorino and its specific output of energy, its strength in newtons. 1. Diamonds hit at the right angle, again, with the correct force, and depending on the quality, can shatter with as little as 4 pounds of force. Makes sense if you think about it. The femur bone in our body, for example, can hold an immense amount of weight and pressure. It is the, load-bearing structure of our human body. But if you just hit it at the right angle, with the right amount of force, of course, it is going to fracture, at least. It just, again, takes the right hit. Part 2, that was a little more consistent, is that diamonds are otherwise incredibly durable if you're not hitting at that exact spot, requiring an immense amount of force over its entire body to shatter if done without a level of precision. So, allow me to reiterate. Nidorino's horn is apparently harder than diamond, and of course, diamonds can destroy other diamonds. And now you're telling me that it is a precise horn that is piercing into other diamonds in order to destroy them? This means that Nidorino is only needing to exert 4 pounds of force on average in order to shatter a diamond, or at least break one. Though I still wouldn't mess with them, because even though, 4 pounds, I can exert 4 pounds of force, that is still a horn that will turn you into a human donut. It will go straight through your bones. And so, I will at least say 4 pounds also translates to about 18 newtons. Lotad lifts and carries Pokemon over streams to help them cross safely. The heaviest common Pokemon on the routes that Lotad does appear on that needs help crossing the water because it can't swim or fly and would not try to eat Lotad is actually Ralts at 14.6 pounds. If we ignore drag, which is going to be our common rule as we simplify all the math for this, we can assume that Lotad carries the Pokemon across a 3-meter stream, something that Pokemon wouldn't be able to jump across, and Lotad is exerting then, carrying this weight over that distance, about 150 newtons or joules of energy. Timber. When it can easily lift a block of timber nearly 3 times its own weight, it is close to evolving. So that means that when it can lift 82.8 pounds up the full height of itself, being 0.6 meters, it's basically at its peak power, putting it to the measurement of 221 newtons or joules. And to be fair, that isn't too crazy. I don't really need to put that into newtons, but I'm doing it for consistency. Torracat. It boasts powerful front legs. With a single punch, it can bend an iron bar right over. Believe it or not, of course, there is already an equation for this. The question is, how far does it bend? How long is the bend? We'll assume it's a 180-degree difference. We'll use a 20-millimeter thick bar, and there's no true average industry standard for a bar, so I just figured that that was a fair thickness. Now, I'm also assuming it does get bent all the way down to within 10 millimeters of itself. And I'm not going to lie to you, I had to use an online calculator for this one. This one was far, far too intricate for me to simplify like I do later on equations and problems that we're going to run into. So, nevertheless, I did get a total newtons of 512 newtons exerted. Very small, but nothing to sneeze at. Driftblim is known to carry Pokemon and people, though it doesn't really direct itself, so it's moving less than a meter a second with maybe 136 pounds. Because of this, we have simply a Pokemon exerting very little energy for a total of 605 joules at most. Now, to explain that, that is essentially just on Earth, it takes a certain number of joules energy to move something that is 1 pound a singular meter. And that is, again, specifically on Earth. Typically, you'd want to have everything in like kilograms, kilometers, meters, but that's one of the weird few exceptions. Yanmega's wings are powerful enough to carry an adult human, though it does not state a speed. Numel is a very strong Pokemon, having served humans for many years, with its ability to carry heavy loads up to 220 pounds or 100 kilograms. We're going to give it the benefit of the doubt and say it's moving at a meter a second, which is probably a lot faster than Numel is actually moving. We take the 220 pounds, multiply it by 1 meter a second, then we do it once more by the 4.45 newtons, which is what it actually takes to move a pound a singular meter on Earth, generic, and we get 979 newtons. Again, a lot of this is really simple. It's really within our realm of possibility. I'm not saying it's easy to do it, but we're also mixing together Pokemon that are punching, kicking, throwing, picking things up, and walking. So it's a matter of, okay, 220 pounds. It's not easy to move with 220, but that's also the maximum strength that Numel has. Lickitung straight up lifts people with its tongue, though it doesn't really do it all that fast. We can still assume it happens in roughly 1 second for ease, and with Lickitung being 1.2 meters tall, we can assume that is the height that it is lifting someone to. But we actually can't, because its tongue is actually twice that length, and it will utilize the whole tongue. It was born with the whole tongue, it will utilize the whole tongue. So, we're actually going to use 2.4 meters in our calculation, giving us a Newton total if it raises a average human to, you know, the full 2.4 meters of 1,452.48 newtons. Also using, just for clarity's sake, I'm using 132 pounds as the global average of the weight of a person that is actually a lady instead of a gentleman, for that matter. Why did I do that? I wanted an average, and I just took the lower amounts just to be safer about it. Though some instances, depending on the Pokemon, I do give them the maximum benefits, and I will explain those in the future, of course. Before we continue into the next section, I do want to say thank you so much for watching. If you do enjoy this, please make sure you do subscribe or even become a member for as little as $3 a month. That helps support my small channel a ton, as ad revenue is pretty small all in all. And by having memberships, it supports the health of the channel and ensures that I don't have to slow down production to go get another job. All that money then goes towards not just making sure I have my bills paid, but then actually goes back into the channel and even commissioning artists that are very deserving of the extra money that I would then have. So, if you can, once again, please do become a member. Thank you so much for watching, and back to the video. The next section we're about to get into is actually superhuman feats of strength or machine-assisted strength. This might be done by bodybuilders. It might be through hysterical strength of somebody lifting up a car because someone's trapped under it. Or, again, machine-assisted. We need some sort of like forklift or anything along those lines. Not large machinery, not super heavy machinery, but something large enough to take care of the weight of lifting some of these heavy items up, or even tossing them for that matter. The first is Girder, and it is known to usually carry an I-beam girder in its arms. It regularly lifts it above its head, even in its image here, and it is 1.2 meters tall, with I-beams weighing about 121 pounds per foot at max. It seems to be about the same height as our girder here, so we have a roughly 474 pound I-beam that results in a total of 2,531 newtons. Funny enough, its evolution Conkeldurr is right up next, as it freely swings 2 concrete pillars as its preferred way of fighting. Again, that is just its preferred way. It does this freely, it does it all the time, so this might be like the lower end of Conkeldurr's strength. A cubic foot of concrete weighs about 150 pounds. Conkeldurr is 4'7", and so we will assume the concrete reaches the full height and is not broken and completely filled, which gives us 687.5 pounds of concrete per pillar, which, if it brings it up over its head, as it does since it does freely swing them around, we need to use the meters for distance here, multiply the weight of the pillars, and our efforts of 4.45 for every pound a meter movement, and we get 4,283.125 newtons every single time it swings those pillars from the ground over its head. And again, no, that is just one pillar, not both. Go-Goat is a ride Pokemon that is consistently carrying people throughout the game, if not ourselves, so we can at least tell the minimum effort being exerted. Force equals mass times acceleration. Many Pokemon are moving at about 30 or 60 kilometers an hour, so we'll assume, considering in the games that we are a child, that we are moving at a maximum run speed of maybe 30 kilometers an hour. Divide 30 by 60, then again by another 60, giving us minutes and then seconds, and we get 8.33 repeating meters a second. We multiply that by 136 for the weight of a human, and then 4.45 newtons, as it does take that many newtons once again to move 1 pound 1 meter on Earth, resulting in 5,043 joules of energy used every second. Braviary, specifically Hisuian Braviary, is another ride Pokemon, so we can use the same stats and ideas, except we don't know how fast it actually is flying. The best we can do is actually look at other Pokemon that do have a speed stat given. In the case of one of my recent videos actually, I have Kilowattrel being the slowest flying type Pokemon that actually has its speed information stated, and it flies at a speed of 43.75 kilometers an hour. And there's a very good chance that Braviary does fly faster, but this gives us a baseline minimum of, after all calculations, 7,354.8 newtons a second. And the newtons aren't going to mean anything to you right now, but as we go further, I'm going to have real-life comparisons to give you a stronger idea. This is, again, within the realm of imagination. We can understand how this is working. One you're not going to expect to see this low, and don't set me on fire, is Mega Mewtwo X. It doesn't belong down here, but bear with me. Due to the Mega Evolution, Mega Mewtwo's X physical power received a formidable growth. Its muscles are augmented with physical power, giving it a grip strength of 1 ton, 2,000 pounds. A 1 kilogram grip strength translates to about 9.81 newtons, and there are 907.185 kilograms in a ton. So we have a grip strength of 8,899.48 newtons, which may not seem very impressive on the surface, but there isn't really much that Mega Mewtwo X wouldn't be able to grab and hold on to forever. Also, I will note, grip strength is not one-to-one with crushing strength, and that means that Mega Mewtwo X is pretty unmeasured in its actual combat prowess. Just be careful if you're going to hold hands with it, I guess. Otherwise, you're going to have a nice paper hand when you get it back. Diggersby. Its ears are as powerful as an excavator, being strong enough to lift objects weighing over a ton and reduce dense bedrock to rubble, and prove to be an invaluable asset in Diggersby's digging. Knowing it could break bedrock is pretty negligible. It's really, honestly, entirely irrelevant. Bedrock changes between many different locations, even within singular countries, or within portions of states within the US. So, that could be incredibly variable, and the bedrock could not even be all that strong. What isn't that variable is that it says it can lift something weighing over a ton. We will use a ton exactly, so that way we have a relative idea of its strength and probably the higher end, to be fair. It is a meter tall, so I will imagine that it lifts it over its head, as we assume with all of our other Pokemon. This means that it is lifting 1 ton, or 2,000 pounds, 1 meter, giving us a total of 8,900 joules. If we want to be honestly really fair, a small car weighs less than 3,000 pounds, meaning you can imagine Diggersby lifting up your average small car without hurting itself. Corviknight. It's used as a taxi within the world of Pokemon, and in a number of different scenes, we can see it carry 2 people in its cage of sorts, and then the taxi rider itself. So, we can compare the carriage to being that of a Ferris wheel's carriage, which weighs about 1,000 or more per gondola, carriage, person carrier, whatever you want to call it, which seems absurd to me. But it is a big old container of metal that's supposed to be sturdy and hold people in it, so here we are. Now, we do have to add in 3 average humans and get a total weight of 1,408. Then, if we assume it's moving at a rate of 43.75 kilometers an hour, reduce it all down, multiply it out, and we get a newtons per second of 17,111. Up next is Mega Pinsir. When it Mega Evolves, Pinsir is left in a constant state of excitement. It rarely touches the ground due to its ability to now fly. It can travel up to approximately 30 miles per hour, 50 kilometers an hour, and uses its 2 large horns to pierce its enemies before shredding them. Mega Pincer can lift opponents up to 10 times heavier than itself with its horns and still fly around easily. It weighs 130.1 pounds, meaning that it can lift 1,301 pounds easily, and it can move at a rate of 50 kilometers an hour, which is 13.88 meters a second. Force equals mass times acceleration, punch it all in, and we get roughly 18,069 newtons a second. Cyclozar. When carrying a human, Cyclozar can reach a speed of over 70 miles per hour, 120 kilometers an hour, and it maintains its balance and absorbs shock while running by using its hard head and thick yet supple tail. It also uses its head and tail to attack during battles, and is strong enough to carry luggage and equipment used by humans. Let's just say it's carrying a singular human and nothing else. So 136 pounds, 33.33 meters a second when we break it down, and because it has wheels, and we are ignoring drag anyway from wind speed or wind drag, and then we're also, wheels kind of help with ignoring friction for the most part anyway, but we're generally going to be ignoring friction in all of these calculations. Ideal environments, baby. So at the end of this, we get a total newtons exerted of 20,173. Fanpy, this small trunk is sensitive yet strong. It can send a person flying with an affectionate, playful bump of its snout. The trunk is also strong enough to shatter any arm bones it hits. Additionally, this little Pokemon is easily capable of carrying an adult human on its back. So I can tell you now, breaking any arm bone is way more impressive as a feat, as the humerus is one of the stronger bones of the human body. For example, I have information from the Discovery Channel's website. Moreover, talking about other bones like the human femur. If you're looking for the specifics to snap a piece of your skeleton, it takes about 4,000 newtons of force to break the typical human femur. But don't run out and start applying pressure to femurs and then get upset at us when things don't break correctly. A lot depends on the bone itself, its position in the body, and the angle of the attack. Remember what I was saying earlier? The age, diet, and lifestyle of the bone owner also plays a role. The humerus itself is roughly a set of 107 MPa. But of course, again, that depends on how it's hit. That's basically compressive strength. How hard do you, what is the stress of just compressing it, punching it, whatever it is, for it to then break? Using MPa, we can get actual PSI, being 15,519 pounds per square inch, which translates to 21,028 newtons. And now your head's probably spinning a little bit, and you're like, he just said so many numbers, he just said so many different things here. Don't worry about it. Don't overthink it. That was my headache, and you're gonna hear a little bit here and there, and I'm saving you so much time and so much brain aneurysm power by not having to listen to every single calculation. Mudbray. This Pokemon boasts immense strength for its size and is able to drag or carry loads up to 50 times its own weight. It weighs 242.5 pounds, meaning it can carry 12,625 pounds or 5,726.6 kilograms. Though it isn't moving very fast, we'll still overestimate a little bit and say it can move a meter a second, giving a total force of 25,483.37 newtons. Here's a really fun one, I think, especially as I love this Pokemon, Tinkaton. Tinkaton wields a crude, gigantic metal hammer that weighs over 220 pounds, or 100 kilograms, and is larger than its own body. It has also been depicted to throw this hammer to hit Corviknight out of the sky, all while weighing only 28.7 pounds, or 12.8 kilograms itself. Yes, the majority of its Pokédex weight is just its hammer. Now, we are going to oversimplify this and still just use force equals mass times acceleration, ignoring resistance. Corvids, ravens, crows, which is what Corviknight is based on, may fly about 500 meters off of the ground. So, the hammer just needs to close that gap in less than a second in order to hit Corviknight before it can even notice and react to Tinkaton's attack. Yeah, that's a lot. We're still only going to use 1 second though, so 500 meters, 1 second. And with that, it comes out, after all calculations, to 50,000 newtons of force. Cufant is said to be tremendously strong, carrying loads of over 5 tons with minimal effort. Funny Math then says that with a 1.2 meter height, this takes about 53,400 newtons of effort, and that is what Cufant can easily do. That means, once again, it could just lift an empty school bus with ease. This little 3'11" tall elephant, it's just like watching a middle schooler with superpowers. It's sky high all over again. That's gonna knock some core memories into people. If I watch that ever again, I know I'm not gonna like it. The nostalgia goggles aren't gonna hold up. Crustal does possess legs of enormous strength, enabling it to carry heavy slabs for many days, even when crossing arid land. Again, I'm not doing the math for all of them. I'm placing them where they would generally be. Especially as these slabs look like they are sedimentary rock, so even if they are super heavy, it's hard to tell exactly what they could be and what the weight could be, or just what Crustal's full strength would be, let alone other Pokemon. Tapu Bulu pulls large trees up by the roots and swings them around. I don't even want to do the math that it takes to pull a massive tree from the ground, so we're just gonna do the whole swinging the tree like it's just a little stick that a dog found in the backyard. Koa trees are a common hardwood in Hawaii, and according to the wood database, yes, that's a thing, they can be 65 to 100 feet tall. So we'll just use the full 100 since this is a legendary that resides in undisturbed areas and is considered a god of nature, almost quite literally in the translation. And then they are up to 5 feet in diameter, weighing about 38 pounds a cubic foot when dry. For ease, we are going to assume that it is 100 feet tall, but then only 2 square feet in thickness all around. Multiply by each other, multiply by 38 pounds, and we get 7,600 pounds per tree, and it does swing too. But then now we have to convert that into actual energy, and it is a 1.9 meter tall Pokemon. And we get a total Newton value of 64,258 Newtons, so I don't know, man. Can you lift a tree like that? I can't. This is going beyond. This is going so far beyond. Once again, we are getting into the areas of we need machinery to do this stuff. Also, did anybody else know that Tapu Bulu was that tall? That is ridiculously tall. I did not realize that, and that's a lot scarier. Mind you, it's also swinging these trees probably faster than we can blink, so the Newtons of that is probably way higher. Chestnut is renowned for its tank-like body. It is capable of flipping a 50-ton truck. Now, we're going to assume that the truck moves 2 meters in a second, since it is just being flipped. 50 tons translates to 45,359 kilograms, and that gives us a force of 90,718 newtons, which we're starting to get near a tenth of a stick of dynamite. Still small, but it's there. It's a bit of an explosive power. Rhyhorn, due to its short legs, is inept at turning and can only run in straight lines. It does not care if obstacles get in the way, merely smashing through them and sending them flying, although it may feel pain the day after a collision. This personality is how Rhyhorn expands its territory, and it is powerful enough to shatter skyscrapers or mountains instantly after charging forward with head tackles. It can also knock a semi-trailer flying. Now, this makes it far more difficult, because it isn't actually destroying entire mountains, but we know that it is also having a hand in creating tunnels throughout the mountains. We don't really know how long it's doing this, or even if it's just expanding its territory slowly over the total of the 6 miles. So, again, we also don't know if that's radius or diameter, so we're just going to go with the semi-trailer idea. An empty 14-foot trailer weighs at most 14,000 pounds when empty, and while made of a number of different materials, including steel, we're just going to assume that we have 14,000 pounds of steel on our hands for ease. Because it also sends it flying, we will also assume it travels 30 meters in a second, so translate the pounds into kilograms, and we have a final calculation of about 190,508.8 newtons or joules of energy, bringing us to nearly a fifth a stick of dynamite. And we are in the area where I have to start doing the death battle thing and start saying, oh, this is dynamite, oh, this is TNT. That is where we're at. We are starting to reach those levels of power. Electabuzz debuts in Buzz Off Electabuzz in the Pokemon Adventures manga under the ownership of Lieutenant Surge. It is so vicious that even its trainer cannot keep it in its ball, and its Thunder Punch attack tears through ground floors like wheat. Also, go check out my Pokemon Adventures video. I desperately want to do more on the manga. I literally cover the entire first 3 volumes, and it is arguably one of the best ways to enjoy Pokemon, at least in my opinion. And if that can at least get a lot more views, I can justify spending time to go read and cover another video on the Pokemon manga, which I think is well worth the time. Now, those floors were inside the SSN, which is comparable to the Titanic. The floors on the Titanic were made of linoleum, pitch pine wood, and teak wood. White pine can take 8,600 pounds per square inch even before breaking, while teak has tensile strength of 71.15 megapascals. Thank you, Science Direct, because otherwise I was probably never going to find that information, and I thought I wouldn't be able to answer this. Now, that translates to the ability to take about 10,319 pounds of force per square inch before it would just break. If we just assume that we have 15 square inches of contact between Electabuzz's fist and the flat surface, that gives us 154,785 pounds of force needed to break given sections at a time. To explain that better, because even my head was starting to spin when I did this, the bigger the hand, the more area of contact, meaning the more your force is spread out. If it was a thinner object, there'd be a lot more concentrated force that would just pierce through. But in the case of Electabuzz, we're talking about a pretty big fist, which is probably more than 15 square inches with this big old yowie hands that it has. But we are just gonna go with what we have, because it's hard to tell if it's actually those hands are that large or if it's just dramatized for effect. Nevertheless, I digress. There are about 1.355 joules per pound of force exerted, meaning that if we take the teak wood into account, since it is a tougher wood, then the Electabuzz has a minimum joule output per punch of 209,734, again, a fifth a stick of dynamite, which is comparable to actually an M80 firework. That is what it's punching with easily, like wheat. Now, along the lines of Electabuzz, we have a number of Pokemon that I'm going to blitz through here that would be a lot of the same math, trying to figure out wood tree density and all this other stuff. Oh, what does it weigh when it's dry? Oh, how tall it is? How much is it, how much is it actually making contact with when it breaks? Blah, blah, blah. So we have a list of Pokemon here that I'm going to tell you about and not do all the math for, that are along this same level of power. They are in no particular order until we get to numbers once more. Printplop. On its body are 4 large white spots that resemble buttons, and instead of arms, it has long, sturdy, flipper-like wings that are capable of knocking over and snapping trees. Kranidos. When it lived in dense forests and jungles 100 million years ago, it would use headbutts to snap obstructing trees, down its prey, and combat Pokemon like Aerodactyl and even other Kranidos. Ursaring, while it is skilled at climbing trees, gathers food by snapping them and collecting whatever berries or fruits fall down. Stakataka, its legs are strong enough to break a tree in half. And then Beware, on very rare occasions, is seen hugging a log while sleeping. The reason is due to it mistaking the log for a friend. However, these logs tend to be smashed to pieces accidentally due to Beware's immense strength. Can you imagine trying to cuddle a Beware? They look so cuddly, and then you just wake up with a broken spine? I guess you wouldn't really wake up at that point, would you? And now we're back to the feats of strength that are mathematically and scientifically sound. Caparaja has enough physical strength to pull an airplane, and its trunk is strong enough to crush boulders into powder. Special Olympics Indiana is gonna help me with this one, as based on one of their challenge records, I have based my information. I'm now reading all the information out. I am substituting distance given to us, so that way we can get an idea of Caparaja's strength. And with the wheels removing friction once again, making it negligible alongside wind drag, we can just use force equals mass times acceleration. Yay! And this time, we will assume it is being moved at 5 meters a second. The mass of a Boeing 757 jetliner, according to them, is 82 tons, or 74,389.1 kilogram. And you multiply that out, and you get 371,945.5 newtons or joules, being a little over a third stick of dynamite a second. Machop's entire body is covered with muscles that will never tire or cramp. I wish I had that. With these muscles, it can lift many times its own body weight and is capable of hurling 100 adults. It's 100, we can make it easy. The global average, again, at the lower end is 136 pounds, apparently, which we multiply by 100, giving us 13,600 pounds. And sure, let's say it can hurl them 100 feet, which roughly translates to 30 meters, making acceleration easy by saying it happens in 1 second. And we get a total of 408,000 newtons, or 0.4 sticks of dynamite. But trust me, as it evolves, it gets pretty scary in terms of power. I'm just intimidated by the effort it will take me to find the numerical answer for the future ones soon enough. Next couple of Pokemon carry Pokemon or people or throw them or like carry large objects, so they're along the same lines here. As Machoke is a Pokemon of immense strength, its muscles are as hard as steel and it is capable of lifting extremely heavy objects with only one finger. Don't worry, we'll talk about its evolutions later and how much of a headache they gave me. Lapras, though, is gentle and helpful and enjoys ferrying people across bodies of water, which is an incredibly long distance and would take a lot of energy over time. And then Grotle/Torterra are both Pokemon that are known for allowing other Pokemon to stay on them for short periods of time. More specifically with Torterra, it'll allow Pokemon to live on them their entire lives. There are Pokemon that are born on Torterra and die on Torterra. It truly is just a world turtle, and I love it. It's an amazing starter Pokemon. We have more numbers here, as we're going to talk about Scrafty, who is powerful enough to kick through concrete blocks used by Conkeldurr. We're simply assuming Conkeldurr's blocks are only a foot cubed still, and so with 4,000 psi and a foot that is definitely no larger than a 24-inch square area, converting it into energy, we get 427,200 joules of energy, 0.427 sticks of dynamite. Mega Heracross can lift 500 times its own weight with its horns, but it doesn't say anything about throwing people. Mega Heracross weighs 137.8 pounds and is 1.7 meters tall. Assuming it lifts from the ground its full weight, it would lift 68,900 pounds. And once again, it takes 4.45 joules of energy, move 1 pound, 1 meter. So all we have to do is multiply our given weight by the 4.45, multiply it by 1.7 for a total joules of 521,228.5 joules, a little over a half stick of dynamite. Once again, that's a Pokemon that probably doesn't belong in that exact spot, especially since it is right before its normal form, regular Heracross, where it says it can lift and throw objects 100 times its own weight. Heracross weighs 54 kilograms, so it can lift 5,400 kilograms and then throw it. While it is unrealistic, we're just going to assume that the object is thrown 100 feet away in a single second, 30 meters then, giving us a total of 540,000 newtons, still a half stick of dynamite in the end. Donphan has the ability to curl up into a ball and violently roll around like a wheel. These rolling tackles are strong enough to knock down a house. Now, this could simply just be it slamming into the foundation, a support beam, although that's typically underground. Either way, all of this could result in a house collapsing if you just hit the house just right. So, it could vary far too much for me to even be willing to do the math here, but I'll make it up to you with Rampardos, as there are records of a Rampardos that escaped after being revived and evolved, destroying a skyscraper in the process. This means that it is actually breaking through a layer of concrete and then steel just to ruin the foundation. This was a very difficult calculation to not be put on a list for. So the reinforced concrete has 5,000 psi at the upper range, and we'll talk about how I know about steel later on. Ultimately, though, it's going to be at most 63.5 millimeters thick, really only 609 millimeters in diameter for this steel. So, the thing with that is, though, Rampardos' headbutt isn't making that much contact. It's a headbutt. Even when its big skull, it is not slamming its entire head or even its body into it, so it has a smaller area of contact. So we might just assume, breaking it all down, that there's only 6 square inches of contact. And now, It takes 481 million newtons of force to crush 1 cubic meter of steel. And we're not crushing that much steel, we're crushing a much smaller amount. If we assume it breaks through both at once, rather than just constant repeated headbutts, we have 243,900 joules just for the concrete. Then we have, for the steel, 705,677 joules, for a total of 949,577 joules, or just shy of 1 stick of dynamite. My own head is starting to spin all over again, and I'm second guessing all of my math, even though I'm 95% sure that it's correct. And at least deep down inside, I know that if I get some of these wrong, I've kept it consistent enough that they are still within relative range of where they should be in comparison to each other. It is just so many numbers, and I'm sorry for you, but I feel more sorry for anybody who might get caught by an Arbok, as it is capable of crushing opponents by coiling its body around them and then squeezing them tightly. It can even flatten steel oil drums. If it is a 55-gallon drum, it might be about 42 pounds of steel, which translates to about 19 kilograms. Again, we know 481 million newtons of force to crush 1 cubic meter of steel, and a cubic meter of steel weighs about 7,850 kilograms. Divide the weights, multiply by 4, and we get a crushing power from Arbok of 1,164,203.8 newtons, or 1.1 stick of dynamite. 1.1 sticks of dynamite. You would say 1 stick, but you say 1.1 sticks. Yeah, it's weird. Either way, explosive dynamite power crushing your body from Arbok. And so we're going to have a couple of Pokemon that break through sheet metal or are able to get through, you know, maybe a little bit thicker metals, eat metals, so on and so forth. We're going to assume that it's steel or relative equivalents and such. As such, I'm not going to be doing the math for the number of Pokemon that I'm about to mention here until we start getting into thicker slabs of steel. Gible. Its dorsal fin is strong enough to carry a person. As shown in the animated series, Gible is capable of eating through most types of metal. Excadrill, due to its evolution, its drill has turned into steel itself. It can straighten its entire body, allowing it to spin like a drill, and can cut through iron and steel plating, digging at speeds of over 90 miles per hour, 150 kilometers an hour. It's very easy to break something that you are made of, although the problem then is if that hits you or you hit it wrong, since you're made of the same material, you could also break. Which explains why Excadrill is such a pointed drill. It's important for it to be precise, so that way there's more force going into a concentrated area instead of it getting spread out and risking itself being broken in retaliation. Tyrant has strong jaws which have enough force to shred an automobile, and it tends to unknowingly inflict injuries while playing, even on its trainer. And then its evolution, Tyrantrum, thanks to its gargantuan jaws, which could shred thick metal plates as if they were paper. It was invincible in the ancient world it once inhabited. If you want to know a bunch about that, go check out my ancient Pokemon video. I covered all of those a long time ago, like early when I started making these types of videos, but there's a lot of good information there. It's a little less organized because I fangirl a lot. I don't know why I said fangirl, fanboy. I act like a goofus. We're gonna say that. Nevertheless, we're moving on to Carvanha, which has powerful jaws and razor-sharp teeth that are able to chew through solid steel, rip up boat hulls, and rip wooden boats to pieces. As a result, sailors avoid getting their boats dented by it at all costs. Farigiraf. Its neck attack is powerful enough to destroy both stone and steel beams. Steel beams amount to about 20 to 40,000 compressive strength, so we will take the 30,000 from that. We'll give it a 6-inch square section for it to impact, resulting in 1,463,400 joules, or 1.463 sticks of dynamite. Kingler I've actually covered a bit in my video on whether or not you can survive the oceans of Pokemon. Fun video, you should check that one out after this one as well. And it is often found on the edges of water, usually the ocean. Its powerful claws have 10,000 horsepower and are capable of prying open the shells of Shelter and Cloyster. To put that into better perspective, 1 horsepower can move approximately 550 pounds a singular foot every second. So in the case of Kingler, it can move 5,500,000 pounds a whole foot in 1 second. This means that it has a force of 1,676,400 newtons with every swing of its arm, or 1.67 sticks of dynamite. Explains why it can't really slap Cloyster open though, because Cloyster is said to be able to withstand a bomb blast. The math actually makes sense for once. I say for once, although with Pokemon I've been finding out more and more that the math actually does make sense. Vigoroth's heart beats 10 times faster than it did as Slackoth, and as such it cannot sit still for even a minute. Attempting to stand still or sleep raises its stress level and agitates its blood. It likes to go berserk by spinning its arms to destroy anything in its path. It runs wild through the jungle. Apparently, because Vigoroth is originally in Hoenn, we have Tropius with the banana tree. I am gonna use the compressive strength of a banana tree for our calculation as the strongest thing that it is commonly destroying. They have an MPA of 123, translates to 17,839.6 psi, which means it's exerting 2,973,236.9 joules of energy, or 2.9 sticks of dynamite when it destroys those trees. In ancient times, Armaldo lived on land by the water's edge and dived into the ocean to hunt for prey. The large wings on its back were used for swimming, while its thick shell protected it from enemy attacks. Its strong claws can break stones, punch through a steel slab, and take down prey. Furthermore, they can be extended or retracted. This just kind of makes me think of like the "Here's Johnny," but with Armaldo and a steel door. Now, apparently industry standard for a steel slab is supposed to be 4 to 6 inches, so we will go with 5. That means we can use the amount of energy it takes to destroy a square meter of steel, ratio it down. That gives us 0.127 meters multiplied by 6,926,400 for a final joule count of 8,796,528, roughly 8.8 sticks of dynamite. It's also important to note that Armaldo isn't actually punching here. It's likely just making first contact with its piercing strike, meaning all the energy, once again, as we've been talking about, is more concentrated in that attack. So, you know, you're not going to get turned into a Gmod ragdoll by the punch, but you're still going to perish as you become a very pristine donut. This next section is a huge power section requiring large, complicated machines or incredible amounts of force. The first up is Buffalins, which is protected by its afro, which absorbs damage, and its headbutts are strong enough to derail a train and send it flying. It can also just destroy a car with a headbutt, so okay. We'll use a bullet train, being a common train in Japan, the most common for that matter, and assume that it is at rest. So we just have to do the basic force equation again. F equals ma, 648,637 kilograms, 30 meters in a second, for a total of 19,459,110 joules for 19.4 sticks of dynamite. Kaboom! Vroom! Flying. Seal. The protruding horn on its head is very hard, and it is used for bashing through thick ice. So, how thick is ice on average in the Arctic region? That's our question. It can be upwards of 4 meters thick for the floating sheets, though now we are working with ice. It does have different levels of durability depending on how compressed it is, meaning that you can have a compressive strength between 0.5 to 20 MPa. So we're gonna struggle, which, don't worry your little head about it. That was my problem to have the headache like I am now. I passed Calculus 2 in college before I dropped out, and here I am, not even using calculus, but math is helping with all of this in general. Help me. Now, 20 MPa is converted to about 2,900 psi, pounds per square inch, and the conversion will call for square meters if we translate psi to newtons. And Seal is not breaking up all that ice, just enough to get through. So, we'll be nice still, be generous, and still give it a full square meter, giving us 19,994,804 newtons or joules for just under 26 of dynamite. And no, before you freak out, real-life seals are not exerting this much power, especially because they're not punching through super thick areas. This is just Seal's best case scenario, and I can almost guarantee Dugong is absolutely exerting this much force on the regular. Along the same lines as this ice-punching Pokemon monster, Celio lives in herds on ice floes. Using its powerful flippers, it shatters ice and dives into the sea to hunt prey 5 times a day. Now, I have to give credit on this next one for Whiscash, as once again, if you've seen the speed video, if you haven't, go watch it. If you have, I talked about an audience member, Plow, who is also in the Discord, which you could join, and he and I went over some of the numbers. He double-checked some of my stuff, and honestly, it's really fun to have somebody else, just as a, like, oh, let's compare notes real quick to be able to do that with, as this is the only calculation I did not spend the time doing, and Plow looked at me and said, magnitude 1.7 earthquake is about what Whiscash is doing, considering how far away it can be felt from where Whiscash is, and that translates to about 22 million joules. So thank you, Plow. Once again, you phenomenal human being. Celesteela live in another world named Ultra Crater. Grows out of the ground like a plant in its homeworld and explodes the ground as it flies away into space for unknown reasons. According to Wake from the Aether Foundation, Celesteela's most distinctive feature is the energy that it stores within itself, a flammable gas that it can shoot from its 2 arms, mostly used to propel itself in flight or for battle, but has sufficient power to lift it and even fly into space. I'm going to say now this is kind of an honorable mention, but I also want to mention how it's very important for Celesteela to be able to withstand this force. A real-life comparison would actually be the powerful jaws of the Tyrannosaurus Rex. The reason why it had such a massive schnoggin was the fact that with the amount of force that it could exert with its jaw, its teeth, if it did not have such a large cranium to be able to survive the reverse impact of that, because all the force exerted also comes back to you for the most part, it's not a one-to-one, then you're going to be facing a lot of pain, and it probably, theoretically, could have shattered its own skull. If its skull was not thick enough, it would not have been able to support it, it would not have survived. So, Celesteela has to be able to output this force and actually be able to take it in return. So, it's actually really interesting. And again, honorable mention, I did do the math on it. Now, the minimum velocity to escape is, or getting into the atmosphere, escaping Earth's gravity, is 40,270 kilometers an hour, 25,022.6 miles per hour. Celesteela also weighs 2,204.4 pounds. We can break all this down to 40,270 meters, and then down to meters per second, 11,186.11. Multiply that out with 2,204.4 pounds to get 24,658,663.33 joules every second, equivalent to 24,658.6 sticks of dynamite. This is getting ridiculous. Again, I said large machines for a reason. Goodra. Goodra can become uncontrollable once enraged. The horns can hit 100 times harder than the blow of a heavyweight boxer. It is also capable of throwing punches with incredible force. Heavyweight boxer. Great! So we're going to use Mike Tyson as an example, who is said to have a PSI of 1,800 in his prime. Multiply that by 100 to get 180,000, and we already know we can convert that to joules by multiplying by 195.24, and so we get 35,143,200 joules, or 35.1 sticks of dynamite. It is slamming somebody with its horns. You will not survive. This is Goodra going on a rampage, meaning that it is constantly making those impacts, and it is doing so out of rage. Unfocused power that just destroys so much. How is anything intact in the Pokemon world? But don't worry, it gets worse. It's gonna get so much worse. Hariyama makes things a bit more difficult and overly complicated, so we're going to have to break things down to figure out which of its feats is actually a higher feat of strength, because otherwise we can't really imagine it properly. And fun fact, this is actually a peek behind the curtain, the first calculation that I did for this video. Now, Hariyama has the habit of challenging others without hesitation to tests of strength. It's been known to stand on train tracks and stop trains using forearm thrusts. Now, can you just imagine?
Ladies and gentlemen, prepare for impact. We have another Hariyama on the tracks.
It can also send a 10-ton truck flying with a straight arm punch. So, let's just make things easier for once. Sending a 10-ton truck flying with one punch. The truck is assumed to not be moving, and the 10 tons is 10 tons, no matter what material it is. The only difference would be the general dispersal of force depending on its size, but we are already deciding that everything is just going to be simplified into blocks, and that is going to be negligible. Because of this, we could just punch some math together to figure out what type of force it takes to move something that weighs 10 tons, approximately 100 feet. After all, it does say that it is sent flying. Also, I realized I lied. This was not the first. Machamp was the first calculation. We'll get to that later. But oh, don't start throwing numbers together just yet. 10 tons and 100 feet aren't the right numbers we should be using. That needs to be converted. So 10 tons equals 9,072 kilograms. 100 feet estimates down to 30 meters. Run that math. Force equals 9,072 kilograms. Multiply that by 30 to equal 272,116 newtons or joules of energy. That translates to roughly a quarter stick of dynamite. And you probably already know where this is going, because why is Hariyama up here? I think we know which feat is going to be the more impressive one. It's also very impressive considering the fact that this is a standing punch. This is not a full body throw your body into it. This is a I'm just doing that and it's gone. Now, we're going to go back to our bullet train, who is the most common train in Japan, or it is the most common train in Japan. Why did I personify it? They move at a rate of 320 kilometers an hour, and with the N700 series, they are said to weigh approximately 715 tons, otherwise known as 648,637 kilograms. We do need to break that down from 320 kilometers an hour to kilometers a second, otherwise this is not going to work out. Easy enough, multiply by 1,000, get meters instead of kilometers, divide by 60 for minutes, divide again for seconds, and we get 88.89 meters a second. If we assume Hariyama stops it in a single second without it dragging it anywhere or anything else, we get a total of 57,657,343 joules of energy, which is far more impressive and equals 57.6 sticks of dynamite. If you're going to tell, if you wanted to make sure all of my other math was correct, Hariyama is basically my proof of concept for this video. It's basically saying, yeah, this is all my steps. This is why math is important to tell all of your steps for, so that way people know that you're legit. And I'm sure there's still a mistake here or there. If there is, feel free to break it down and prove it to me. But remember that this is generalizations to make things easier. Swampers boast the physical strength to easily drag an enormous boulder weighing more than a ton, batter down opponents, and swim faster than a jet ski. It can even tow a large ship while swimming. Swamper's arms are as hard as rocks. The arms can shatter enormous boulders to pieces. It has keen eyesight, enabling it to see in murky waters, and can predict storms, sensing subtle differences in the sound waves and tidal winds with its fins. When a storm is approaching, it will pile up boulders to protect its nest. It makes its nests on beautiful beaches. A lot of feats here, and while we have a defined 1-ton boulder being easily dragged, it might actually be a better measurement to look at the energy required to tow a large ship while swimming. Meaning I get to suffer in private for your enjoyment. Actually, I didn't suffer in private because I streamed me doing research. I'm basically streaming my research every Monday. Off schedule, I stream on Wednesdays and Fridays for sure, playing fun Pokemon games or Breath of the Wild Master Mode. It's great. It's great. Now, there are a lot of different types of ships and classifications, and I'm no sailor. I actually get seasick. But we will go with the supposed average of 100 tons. And now, I will tell you the massive problem here. Is it seawater or freshwater? Seawater has a higher density, so the ship would actually float more. But we also need to know how much this ship sinks into the water in order to determine a number of other factors that are important for this. In other words, we have to start making a lot more assumptions to even get a relative answer. So that's exactly what we're actually going to do, because it's just all that we can do. We need the volume of water displaced by the ship, which gets converted to weight, and then we can just use the funny equation. Is it 100% accurate? No. Is it the best we have? Yes. So what we'll do is actually use the Titanic, because as always, it reminds me of the SSN. The Titanic weight is approximately 52,310 tons, which it then displaced 51,844 tons of water. Pretty close, actually. So we convert that to kilograms, punch it into our equation, and we get a total newtons or joules of 47,032,086. But we want the average weight, and we used roughly half of that by using the Titanic as our example. So I'm just gonna double that amount and assume that the volume stays relatively constant, because that's a big reason as to how much water gets displaced, if it floats for buoyancy, blah, 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 giving us the funny number of 94,064,172 newtons. Again, for no, this is not going to be perfectly accurate, but it's going to give us a pretty strong idea, placing Swamper's strength equivalent to roughly 94 sticks of dynamite, and that is not even talking about its superior, roided out mega form. I know I've said this before, I don't care for regular Swamper, but I love Mega Swamper. It has made me respect it, and I love it so much more. Its design, everything, mwah! When you can make something that I don't like visually into something I love it that much more. And mwah, Mega Swampers, please, punch me. Crocodile. They never allow their prey to escape. Their jaws are so powerful they can crush the body of an automobile. Once again, we assume that is instead a block of steel for ease and fairness, making it an average small car weighing 4,100 pounds. 1 cubic meter of steel, 7,850 kilograms. Convert, divide, multiply, blah, blah, blah. We get 113,952,821 newtons, equivalent to about 113.9 sticks of dynamite. Don't worry, if you thought that's a lot of dynamite before, we're going to get really ridiculous soon enough. Hippowdon also crushes cars with its jaws, so it's about in the same area. Mega Agron is bulkier and more heavily plated than its previous state. The horns on its forehead are now shorter, and it has a third wider horn on its nose. Using its horns, it is said to be able to destroy a steel tank. So this is going to get a little bit weird, because of the fact that I realized that it never actually specifies the tank as in a vehicle. The fact that it even states steel is very different than how other Pokemon talk about other objects and their make. Every vehicle is just stated as a vehicle, small car, it's a truck, it's a trailer, not it's a steel iron trailer, it's not a wood this, it's not a whatever it might be, right? So that means that Mega Agron is actually just destroying what would otherwise be called a large steel barrel, quote unquote. If we go with a large steel barrel somewhere in the middle, or steel tank, then we get about 7,758 pounds, and again, we get the cubic meter of steel, and since it takes 481 million newtons of force to crush 1 cubic meter of steel, we multiply that out, and we actually get 215,620,964 joules, or 215 sticks of dynamite being exerted by Mega Agron. Lairon, yep, I know, again, Mega Agron likely belongs lower on the list, or further up the list, however you want to say it, stronger, but big Pokemon strong, but we're on Lairon, okay? We have confirmed statistics. It builds its nest on mountains where iron ore is buried, which results in it clashing with humans that are mining iron or other Lairon. Now, Lairon do be crunching, right? It's not going to be a very large section of iron. We want something that's going to fit in its mouth, maybe 4 inches cubed, which is 101.6 millimeters that we then have to cube. And we are assuming it is just the iron, instead of talking about all the rock around it. That is a lot easier to break down, which is way overestimating what Lairon is doing by all means, as it gives us 230,729,861 newtons, 230 sticks of dynamite. Again, way over what it actually is, and its previous forms do eat iron at least, so the whole line is kind of crunch and strong with some good jaw. Darmanitan. Its internal fire burns at 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit, making enough power that it can destroy a dump truck with one punch. this is where I first started to actually, in real life, before, script aside, to calculate things easier when it comes to these dump truck situations. Breaking that down is nearly impossible, so we can't make it exact. But what we can do, despite all the potential factors, is break it down into its most basic parts to give us an idea. Problem solving 101! In this case, we know that the average dump truck is 20 to 30,000 pounds. We're going to say it's 25,000 for the sake of this video. In addition, they are primarily made out of steel. As such, again, for the sake of simplicity, while it won't be exact, we're going to assume that anything involving a dump truck will instead involve a 25,000 pound block of steel. The next question, though, is how much power, oh my gosh, my brain is frying. How much power does it take to crush a singular pound of steel? 1 cubic meter of steel weighs approximately 7,850 kilograms. We'll convert that to the 25,000 pound steel to give us approximately 11,340 kilograms of steel. Divide that out, and we get 1.44 cubic meters of pure steel that is being destroyed. It takes about 481 million newtons of force to crush 1 cubic meter of steel, meaning if a Pokemon destroys a dump truck, they're exerting about 692,640,000 newtons of force. 1 newton, again, is 1 joule, and 1 stick of dynamite is 1 megajoule, otherwise known as 1 million joules. And long story short, punch power would be equal to 692.6 sticks of dynamite. There are a couple Pokemon that do follow the same line that just destroy a dump truck. Aeron demolishing a heavy dump truck, which is probably just eating it. I mean, maybe. They do hit it with 1 good tackle, and then it's destroyed, but that is the height of their power. Pangoro, despite its cantankerous demeanor, Pangoro is kind to those it considers to be friends, and does not tolerate those who pick on the weak. With arms powerful enough to snap a telephone pole, it charges into battle like a berserker, heedless of any damage it might suffer. Pangoro can destroy a dump truck with 1 punch and utilizes this strength when pummeling opponents. That is just Jotaro. All Pangoros just need to be named Jotaro, in my personal opinion, but again, that is my opinion. I don't feel like doing the math to snap a telephone pole, especially since we already know it is going to take less effort than destroying a dump truck. Galarian Zapdos also can destroy a dump truck with 1 of its powerful kicks, and then we have Mudsdale, known for its powerful body and emotional fortitude, which prevents it from becoming agitated. Regardless of the trouble it is in, it will never cry out and will defeat opponents with a single blow. The mud around its legs give its kicks extra force. 1 kick can turn a car or a large truck into a scrap pile. When galloping, its hooves can dig holes in asphalt. While it is not swift, it has excellent stamina and can continue on for 3 days and 3 nights while dragging over 10 tons. We don't know the distance for the tons, but it would all around, with everything else, be comparable to our other dump truck destroying Pokemon, especially as it is confirmed to destroy things in 1 strike. Quaquaval states that it can send a truck rolling, as it uses its powerful legs to perform striking dances from far off lands. I hope we figure out what those lands are one day. Part of me really wants to have a video just talking about what I predict to be one of the next big regions. Quilladin is also in this general section, as its tackle is powerful enough to send a trailer flying. Due to this body, Quilladin is immune to pain. Not even violent collisions will phase it. A trailer could be a simple attachment or even a full-on truck trailer. There's such a massive difference here that it doesn't tell us too much, but we do have other Pokemon, again, that give us more defined info that we can work with, that allows us to place it in this general area, and then we have its evolution, which we'll talk about later. Next is actually Nidoking. It is said that Nidoking's tail can topple a metal transmission tower. Nidoking uses this tail to smash, constrict, or break the bones of its prey and enemies. The tail can also be swung to create distance between it and its foes before Nidoking charges. Its steel-like hide adds to its powerful rampaging charges. Nidoking's horn is powerful enough to crush diamonds, and Nidoking is known to be very proud of its own strength. When Nidoking goes on a rampage, it becomes impossible to control. Again, crushing diamonds, its horn, it's hard to say if it's actually crushing them with like a headbutt or if it's crushing them by stabbing into them. As such, we are going to give it the benefit of the doubt, not go with the diamonds, but instead give it a more measurable strength, which is toppling a transmission tower. That sounds ridiculous out loud. We will assume all we need is to actually destroy the support of one leg for this problem. They are made of steel and can be 40 to 60,000 pounds just for one of the main legs. We'll give it 50,000, run the normal steel block calculations, and result with 1 billion. Yes, I said 1 billion with a B. 389,630,446 newtons of energy, or 1.38 thousand sticks of dynamite. And the last one in this section is Jupiter. While its arms and legs are developing inside the shell, it uses compressed gas to propel itself around and can generate enough force to knock down mountains. We don't really know what that really means. Is it just actually causing rock slides? Because I don't think it's literally knocking down mountains as if a cat just slapped a cup of water over. No, there are a lot more Pokemon that are far more definitive, especially Tyranitar. I'm not dealing with this vague property, and I'm putting it here. In this next section, Diamond is breakable. Thank you, your JoJo fans. They're freaking out everywhere. Part 4 is dead. Can't believe Diamond is breakable. But no, in all seriousness, we are finally in a section where we can prove that Diamond is being crushed, not just pierced and broken apart by hitting the right spot. No, these Pokemon can straight up look at a full Diamond and just go, don't really care about that, bonk, and destroy it. So, the first on that list is what you should expect, being Steelix. It is harder than Diamond and can crush any rock with its jaw. 2.397 million PSI. That is the compressive strength of a diamond. And unlike our other Nidos, Steelix is, again, actually crushing it. Not just piercing them, which is way easier. But what is harder is that these diamonds aren't going to be massive. But we'll just give the benefit of the doubt and say we somehow have a square meter of diamonds. Somehow. Basically impossible. But that would then be equal to 16,526,733,232 newtons per square meter, which is more newtons of energy than the entire known combined United States and Russian nuclear arsenals. Steelix. Gunk. World ending. Nothing is surviving a bite from Steelix. And we still have plenty more Pokemon to go over. Gyarados, the monster of the lake, the deity of death itself. Gyarados will go on rampages for as long as a month, destroying everything around it. That isn't very definitive there, but if I had not included Gyarados, I would have been burned at the stake. I almost guarantee it. And we know that it is destroying some portions of mountains. The hard part is that it also consistently uses Hyper Beam, which is not a physical strength, even though Gyarados is physically very powerful. Walrein, while its long tusks are capable of crushing ice up to 10 tons in one blow, they may break during battle. Ice has a 2,900 PSI, roughly 900 kilograms for every meter, and after all the nasty math and conversions, we get 10,079.8 cubic feet of ice, 17,417,946.24 cubic inches, multiplied by 2,900, and again by the conversion for newtons, and we get 68,443,819,750.08 newtons, or 6.84 thousand sticks of dynamite. Again, this is all already more powerful than the nuclear US arsenal stuff. Is my dog snoring? One that I regret putting here, but I don't know what to do, honestly, otherwise. It should not belong here, is Seeking. It uses its powerful horn to bore holes in riverbed boulders in order to shelter its eggs from water currents. So boulders could be a number of different things, and we're going to find a lot of Pokemon in this section. It could have been layered, sedimentary rock that was worn down from the elements from erosion and just left the rock behind. It could be from the great glaciers between Canada and North America that deposited large rocks and even created the Great Lakes themselves. It could be boulders that are composed of igneous rock that erupted from within volcanoes and were deposited and layered over from sediment over hundreds or even thousands of years. It is impossible to truly know for sure. So we have to make more assumptions. Granite is pretty common, all in all, And even if it is a partial composition as a mineral for other rocks, it is found in other rocks as well. So we can just use granite anytime that boulders are used at all. The only problem with this is that granite is pretty strong. It has a compressive strength between 90 to 210 newtons per millimeter squared. We go with the middleman of 150, and Sea King's horn is honestly not massive, though it does need to create a hole large enough for it and Goldeen to separately fit inside of at the minimum. Sea King is 1.3 meters in size, so let's just give it an easy 1.5 meter by 1.5 meter hole, translating to 1500 millimeters. Cube that for size, multiply that by 150 newtons, and we get 506,250,000,000 newtons for 506,000 sticks of dynamite. Although, again, this is a little unrealistic since it is drilling through the granite, not destroying it all at once. So we can say this is just the upper limit. In addition, remember that this is assuming that every speck of granite is fully destroyed, not just broken and then fished out. No pun intended. Now, I would actually like to cut this down by a quarter, as with a precision-based instrument like a horn, Sea King can make its life easier, use less energy, which it will, bumping the output energy down to 126,562,500,000, or 126,562 sticks of dynamite, assuming it were to destroy it all at once, which isn't impossible for most of the Pokemon that we know of. That's a lot of dynamite. My head hurts. Even if we were to look at a smaller Pokemon like Mudkip, despite its small size, it is a very strong Pokemon, capable of moving or crushing boulders larger than itself. It's only 0.4 meters tall. If we just go with a square meter, which would be larger than it, a little bit over double in its size, we can assume that it is destroying it with one good strike. It is completely, as we keep assuming, made of granite, and if it is, then it would take 150 billion newtons of force, giving a total of 150,000 sticks of dynamite. Again, very excessive. The boulder could be made of other materials, but if it's granite and Mudkip can destroy it, that is a very small Pokemon with a lot of power, which makes sense why Swampert becomes very powerful. Wait, I have Mudkip here. This is, of course, excessive, especially since Swampert is so far lower on the list comparative to Mudkip. We know Swampert should be higher, but if we're going off of what we know and what has been stated, this is probably the best we could do. I mean, sure, I could have grabbed Swampert and made a granite block twice its size, and sure, it would probably be in this section way higher up, but nevertheless, we still get a strong idea of how powerful Mudkip also is, and we're comparing different abilities. There's a couple flaws in all of this, but I hope you understand. Other Pokemon that can break boulders like this are like Hisuian and Decidueye, which can deliver powerful kicks that can knock down trees and destroy boulders. Salamence, if enraged, it loses all sense of self and flies into an uncontrollable rampage, destroying everything around it until it tires itself out, and it does live in rough terrain, so I'm sure that it's running into a lot of boulders. Caracosta says it could destroy a giant boulder. Trapinch's jaws are powerful enough to crush any boulders that get in its way as it digs through the sand of the arid deserts, which it's a small Pokemon, it's digging through the sand. I doubt it's going to be actually destroying the full boulders, but again, these are relative placements. Abomasnow can split huge boulders in two. Caesar can destroy any hard object. Sure. Rhydon can topple buildings with a sweeping blow of its tail, and its horn can bore through solid rock and shatter diamonds. Baneri can use its ears to break big old boulders by just rolling them and unrolling them to punch. And Amistar also can do similar things by breaking boulders with its sharp fangs, as it also tries to eat Shelder. And yes, Shelder's shell is harder than Diamond, reportedly, or supposedly for that matter. But even if it is, it's a sharp fang. The correct placements will break through it no problem. Totodile, Mastiff, Mienshao, Raticate, Altaria, all of them can break boulders. Reuniclus is actually really funny here because it has amazing psychokinetic power, but it prefers to pummel opponents with its fists. So it literally sits here and goes, I am incredibly intelligent, but I instead choose to be the caveman today. And yes, it will crush giant boulders. Or sorry, like, it will crush boulders. Not giant boulders, just boulders psychokinetically or with its fist. Polyrath is capable of crushing boulders into dust. And then finally we have more defined measurements again. Like in Rock Midnight, its strategy consists of closing in on its opponent and encouraging attack, then countering with a powerful blow that knocks out its opponent. The full force of its headbutts can destroy giant boulders. We're gonna double the size of the boulder, comparative to Lichen Rock, still assume the best and that it's made out of granite, and Midnight form is 1.1 meters tall. We can assume that that would be 2.2 meters cubit, and that results in 259,200,000 newtons of force, or 259.2 sticks of dynamite. In Alola, Sharpedo is used as a ride Pokemon called Sharpedo Jet to move faster in the water, in which it will destroy rocks in the water. Now, it can also destroy iron with its fangs, but the boulders are far more measurable, and they do look like they are twice, if not 3 times the size of our Pokemon in the games. So we're just gonna say it's twice for the ease of it all, and we have a block of granite measuring 1,800 cubed, multiplied by 150, and we get 874,800,000,000 joules of force, 874,800 sticks of dynamite. This is an arbitrary one, but also we've had a lot of Pokemon that can punch incredibly powerful, or can punch really strong punch, and so Melmetal applies centrifugal force on its arms, allowing it to have the strongest punches of all Pokemon. When it attacks, the nuts encircling its arms slide down as if to bulk up its fists. We're gonna say, sure, it might have the strongest punch, but it is still not the most powerful, as we are going to move on to powers that are well beyond the safety of the Earth. Yes, I know a chunk of these Pokemon have more power than the nuclear arms that exist on our planet that we are aware of between 2 countries, but these next Pokemon are terrors. Their movements should be destroying portions of the planet with ease. And so, we do get one Pokemon that ruins maps and cartographers' dreams everywhere as we talk about Tyranitar, destroying houses and mountains to the point where cartographers do need to create new maps. Unlike some Pokemon we will encounter soon enough, we know Tyranitar is not destroying the entirety of the mountain in one strike. We can, though, at least assume it is destroying twice its own size in one strike without too much effort. That would then give us 2,000 millimeter square blocks of granite. That would then give us 2,000 millimeter cube blocks of granite for a total force of 1,200,000,000,000 newtons. 1.2 million sticks of dynamite. One that is arbitrary is Gigantamax Kingler. The left pincer of Gigantamax Kingler can destroy anything it hits. This is undefined, but considering how the rest of the Gigantamax Pokemon fare, we are just going to place Kingler here. Funny enough, another legendary does make their way here as we have Terrakion. Said to possess phenomenal strength, it can destroy a castle wall with one blow. Castle walls were built thicker at the bottom so that way attackers could not easily break through. This will put a maximum thickness of 20 feet, in which Terrakion will be breaking through reinforced stone. Even if we looked at medieval times, they would be constructed, or these walls would be constructed of limestone, flint, granite, sandstone. Any of those 4. And so we get to use granite again for the best case scenarios, and to be fair to all other Pokemon rather than that stone. So we have 150 MPA, 20 feet, translates to 6.096 meters, 6,096 millimeters, which is our thickness. Terrakion is 1.9 meters in height. We will then use a 1.9 by 1.9 meter, or 1,900 millimeter by 1,900 millimeter area for our cube, or rather our square that we will then turn into a cube as it breaks through. That then results in 2,057,400,000,000 joules of energy, 2.057 million sticks of dynamite. Might seem excessive, but it is slamming into a wall and blowing through it. It takes effort, and we are assuming it is pure, perfect granite. So now we're on to one that you might expect to be here, but I'm going to put a disclaimer on this one because the math and the science behind this one is so incredibly complicated that I could have made an error, but logically it makes sense where we find Mega Rayquaza. It destroys the Delta Meteor by slamming into it, shattering it into pieces, so that way the Earth is safe from anything that might rain down. So we have a lot of insanity going here and a lot of assumptions. Now, the meteor itself is 2.5 times as wide and tall as Mega Rayquaza when it's fully extended. We can see this from just a screenshot of everything after it pierces through. We are going to assume that it is a perfect cube once more for sake of ease. Now, meteors are commonly made up of iron, nickel, silicate materials, and other general elements, and we will assume they're iron for the best case scenario for a Rayquaza here. Now, maximum compressive strength of iron is 220 MPa. Now, I will note that there are some meteors that are double that in their MPa. But we're just going to go with this number because this is what I had at that time before I started second guessing a bunch of information mid-recording. Now, we do have to convert it to PSI this time, which is very weird and very different, giving us 31,908.3 PSI, which we then have a meteor to find the measurements of for its volume. Mega Rayquaza, being 35 feet 5 inches, translates to 425 inches. The meteor is 2.5 times cubed of our lovely dragon, which we assume that the meteor is not hollow at all, completely filled, and is pure iron. It gives us a total volume of 1,199,462,890.625 inches cubed, which we can multiply by the PSI, multiply by 1.355 for the conversion to joules, and we get 51,859,673,475,219.73 joules of energy. That breaks down scientifically to 5.185 times 10 to the 13th power, which is half the strength of the impact that led to the extinction of the dinosaurs, which was 10 trillion newtons. So, yes, that meteor in the Delta episode would have had a very good chance of causing a true worldwide cataclysmic event. Though, mind you, it wouldn't have caused full extinction. The meteors just are thought to have jump-started the whole extinction process over thousands of years. Now, what's also important to remember is that this is not the full extent of Rayquaza's power, since right after this, it still had the energy to fight Deoxys, let alone fly back down from space and not burn up in the atmosphere, or even the fact that it went up into the atmosphere and then destroyed this meteor. There's no real good measurement for Mega Rayquaza here, and this just becomes very messy, and I apologize. We are finally in the section that I'm simply calling Extinction. These I feel a little bit more confident with when it comes to the calculations, as they are terrifying levels of power that even just a fragment of should cause a worldwide explosion, basically. I'm not even joking. I'm not exaggerating. The feats found in this section should cause the Earth to basically explode at this point. It's absurd and hard to wrap our head around, but bear with me. Gigantamax Dreadnought uses its massive body to crush its opponents before using its jaws to finish them off. The power of its jaws have been enhanced to the point where it can bite through metal towers. By combining the strength of its jaws and powerful neck, Gigantamax Dreadnought is capable of punching a hole through a mountain with one strike. According to One Tail, Gigantamax Dreadnought once stopped a flood by using the rubble from a mountain it chewed up. And it's time to generalize things. Mount Everest is made up primarily of granite, limestone, garnet, schist, and other sedimentary rocks. Once again, granite is the strongest there and has a compressive strength of 90 to 210 newtons per millimeter squared. This is gonna suck to get through. Let's go with the middle as always. Hit the 150 since the entire mountain isn't granite and most of the other materials are not as strong. Luckily, this means that we have the newtons already, we just need the width of the mountain. We've used the minimum height of a mountain being 1,000 feet, so we'll just use the lower end of width, noted at 3,000 feet as I've used in other videos, translating to 914.4 meters and 914,000 millimeters. Here comes another problem though. Dreadnought's jaws are not just a square meter. Gigantamax Dreadnought is over 24 meters tall. Its head maybe makes up an eighth of that. So we have 9 square meters or 9 million square millimeters of jaw biting into the mountain. So we are assuming, despite all that we have a perfect rectangle of destruction going through the mountain for simplicity, meaning that we can just multiply the 914 millimeters squared that it takes to get through the mountain by the 150 newtons per millimeter squared to get 1,233,900,000,000,000 newtons. And that's width. That's with the full thing going straight through for that matter. That is, I had to redo that calculation 5 times when I first did it, and every single time the number was just so large, and there were so many moving parts that it was so difficult for me to understand, and each time I found a mistake until I eventually found this answer, and every single time I was getting closer to this answer, it just kept getting larger and larger and larger, but that is equivalent to 1.233 billion sticks of dynamite. Scientifically shown, this would be 1.233 times 10 to the power of 15, which is estimated to be over 10 times stronger than the asteroid that jump-started the events that led to the extinction of the dinosaurs. Gigantamax Pokemon are a threat to all existence, and how anyone in Galar is even alive is a mystery to me. The sheer wind force, the impact that Gigantamax Dreadnought would make would be devastating, without you even being the one to get hit by it. Machamp. Because of course a Generation 1 absolute champion would be here. Machamp are said to know every martial arts style in the world. It punches extremely quickly, throwing 500 punches a second with only one hand. With one hand! It can move a mountain. It can throw an opponent as well over a horizon. The only downside to these Muscle Kings is the fact that their arms move too fast for their brains to keep up with, meaning sometimes that their arms get all tangled up sometimes. In addition, they're basically not allowed to take off their wrestling belt now, as it can lead to dire consequences, as they are basically limiters to the amount of power that Machamp is outputting. I mean, same thing goes for Machoke for that matter. So we can only imagine what it would do without that belt as a Machamp. 500 punches a second doesn't really tell us anything, and over the horizon will depend on viewing distance and the weights of the individual, but the fact that it can push a mountain with one hand is absurd, but we're gonna go with it. Let's go with Mount Everest again. It might be dramatic, but it is fair as we have used it before. Now, a number of sources estimate that Mount Everest is about 357 trillion pounds. That is incomprehensible to the human mind, but I'm going to try anyway using something common. A larger car is roughly 4,000 pounds. That means that it weighs roughly 87,500,000,000 cars. That is still out of our ability to understand. So let me tell you that there are an estimated 1,475,000,000 vehicles in the entire world. In other words, Machamp could lift roughly 59 times the number of cars that exist in the entire world with one of its 4 hands. And as much as I wanted that to equal the weight of the Earth or more, it doesn't. In fact, it's pretty far away, but nevertheless, that is incomprehensible. But we need consistency. So let's convert that over. It takes about 4.45 joules, if you remember, to move 1 pound, 1 meter while on Earth. No matter the direction, as long as we are basically ignoring friction and drag. But then, we plunge it all together, and we get 6,354,600,000,000,000 joules of energy used. That equals 6,354.6 terajoules of energy. That is a little more than 72 Fat Man bombs. Why did I go to the Fat Man bomb? I don't know. That feels like you can imagine what one of those did, considering it destroyed, tragically, an entire city. So, I mean, yeah. I mean, we already know this is stronger than what killed the dinosaurs. The fact that Machamp has this ability, isn't even in its Gigantamax form, terrifies me physically. One that I did not want to put up here, but I was given no choice, is Sock. You know, the Pokemon that nobody paid attention to whatsoever. Sock. If Sock is fully trained and is reaching the peak of its power, it can cleave the ocean itself. Someone else did the math and found out that it would take roughly 10 trillion joules of energy to even just part the Red Sea. And that was making a lot of assumptions. This was for a 1 kilometer wide, 10 kilometer long section. The diameter of the Arctic Ocean is said to be 4,000 kilometers. Now, what I'm about to do does not work this way and gives us a rough estimate. But that lands us, if we do just a comparison, with 40 quadrillion joules of energy used from a maxed out power Sock. Once again, a Pokemon that many people, including myself, overlook constantly. And if you are a Sock enjoyer, congratulations, you basically just won the lottery. Gigantamax Capparaja. While Gigantamax Capparaja's trunk is powerful enough to level mountains and obliterate large structures, Mount Everest has an estimated volume of 1,400,000,000,000 cubic meters. If we continue to assume that it is all granite and completely filled, which it is not, and translate those cubic meters to cubic millimeters, we get 1/6,400,000,000, whatever the heck the next number is, millimeters, which we can just immediately multiply by the amount of energy needed to destroy a square millimeter of granite. This is ridiculous. And we get 2.1 times 10 to the power of 17 newtons. I did not want to say the ridiculous number. It is massively, just overly ridiculous, the amount of energy that it requires to level that entire mountain with one attack. That is 2,100 times stronger than the meteor that jump-started the extinction of the dinosaurs, and that doesn't even include the layers of dense ice right on top of it. That is just the mountain itself. Gigantamax, say it with me now. Gigantamax Pokemon are a liability. They are a threat to all of humanity. But don't worry, we have one more in this section before our final section for today. According to an enduring Sinnoh legend, this puts a smile on my face, Regigigas' strength enables it to pull land masses together and bind them with ropes. This is what created the regions of the Pokemon world. The weight of a continent, oh my god, depends on its size and the weight of its land and crust. Apparently, the North American plate is estimated to weigh 40.7 times 10 to the power of 21 kilograms. But we're going to use that anyway for our example. We just ignore the whole idea of the rope because it's not really tugging it, and maybe it did, but whatever. And we can just get force equals mass times acceleration, making this way easier than I expected. And if we assume that Regigigas, being very large, even though it's slow moving, is moving at 5 meters a second, then we would have 205 sextillion newtons of force. That is 2,035,000,000 times the power of the meteor that killed the dinosaurs. Gigantamax Pokemon, eat your heart out! Nothing compares to my boy Reggie! Can I get a Even though that was Reggie Rock, whatever. Either way, can I get some Reggies in the chat, please? I say in the chat, I'm not live streaming right now. We are in our final section, as we have reached the Pokemon whose power is theoretically infinite, or immeasurable. The first up is actually Hero Form Palafin. It reaches its full power, being strong enough to lift a cruise ship with just one fin and swims at speeds of 50 knots. But it doesn't stop there. Because, you know, let's just say a cruise ship weighs on average 200,000 tons, meaning it weighs 400 million pounds, And you know this bad boy is lifting it above its head in order to show off like the hero it is. So, it is lifting it 1.8 meters up, minimum, probably 2 meters minimum, since it has to lift the ship out of the water. That is the equivalent of 3,204,000,000 newtons with one hand. That is the force of 3,204 sticks of dynamite. And you're like, well, why is he here? It's because it has that dark symbol on its chest. It has the pink glowing heart that takes on the people's cheers. And while it is a weak point, it is shown that that is its source of strength. Basically, the more people cheer, the more power Palafin gets. Theoretically meaning that if every Pokemon and every human on the planet were to cheer for Palafin, it is the ultimate superhero, as it would have infinite strength, infinite speed, infinite defense. It is the ultimate superhero. And it's basically just a spirit bomb in human form. Let's just put that out there. Another one that is theoretically infinite is actually Buzzwole. Now, it lives in a whole other world, Ultra Jungle. Its proboscis is said to be harder than diamond. It can destroy a dump truck with a single punch, but Buzzwole's most distinctive feature is its skill to strengthen itself. It is able to absorb energy and then achieve a chemical reaction between the energy it has absorbed and its own body fluids. As a result, its body swells to an almost explosive extent, its muscles bulge, and are so thick and dense that they're stronger than even steel. Its attack and defense experience a clear leap in power with this happening. So breaking this down, it has a proboscis that can pierce any living creature, excluding the ones that are harder than diamond, of course. Then it is already strong enough to destroy a dump truck with a single punch, and then it absorbs energy from other creatures, experiencing a massive increase in power physically. By all means, if Buzzwole isn't stopped before it grows too much, it could just continue taking energy forever, theoretically making Buzzwole infinitely stronger. Imagine if it took the energy from any of the Pokemon that we have seen on this list. It will multiply, if not exponentially increase its power time and time and time again until there is nothing stronger, faster, or more durable than Buzzwole. An Ultra Beast with infinite power. For once, I actually drew the Pokemon that is one of the strongest, literally one of the tippity top of our tippity top of our mountain here for the thumbnail, as we have Gigantamax Machamp. As Gigantamax Machamp, it swells to enormous proportions and acquires immeasurable strength. Due to Gigantamaxing, its arms are filled with Gigantamax energy, making its punches as hard as bomb blasts. Honestly, considering what regular Machamp can do, this makes perfect sense, and it literally may be able to easily lift the planet itself. And it still has its limiter belt on. Now, our last four Pokemon are theoretically infinite in power, and some of them are kind of no-brainers. One of them is Hoopa Unbound. It had literally the power to summon other legendaries, control them, and had immense physical power, able to fight many legendaries for that matter, and many professional trainers who are well acclaimed in their own right as gym leaders or champions, depending on the type of media in which we find it in. As such, Hoopa Unbound and all of its power is theoretically infinite. I also kind of wanted to put Jirachi here, but there's no proof that Wish can grant somebody physical power, so I didn't put it here, but it would have been really cool to see Jirachi here. We also have Dog and Palkia, which can destroy entire universes on their own or together for that matter. Also, theoretically speaking, if Dog stopped time, walked up to you, and flicked you, no matter how hard it flicked you, when time restarted, you will be decimated. You will be reduced to ashes. Infinite speed in 0 time, which means infinite impact over 0 time, will cause just about anything to explode. I don't know why I say just about anything, as if I'm trying to cover myself, but whatever. Meanwhile, of course, Palkia, it destroys space itself. It creates space itself. What are you gonna do? And of course, because everybody is gonna, be upset if I don't put it here, because you know, it's Arceus. Arceus is always at the tippity top. The 1,000 arms of Arceus. It's Pokemon God. What do you expect? Of course it's going to be at the top here. Do I need to explain anything? It literally uses Judgment. Even though Judgment is a special move, to my knowledge, I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to deal with it. It's too powerful of a Pokemon. So with that, we've gone through every single Pokemon that has a physical feat properly stated and gone through and actually ordered them all. Which one did you not expect to actually be there? There's a couple of them there that I was not prepared to see, but I do hope you enjoyed. Once again, if you do enjoy, please make sure that you subscribe. Go as far as to become a member if you can, as it supports the channel and deep research like this that I can take the time to do, especially as I am a small channel and could use the support. So then, as always, thank you so much for watching. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. Don't think I would do. Please be nice to each other. I love you, and I'll see you next time. Bye!